Greetings, traveller. I'm WeeLin, author, dreamweaver, visionary, plus YouTuber. You are about to enter the world of Garth Marenghi's Darkplace, a cult classic TV comedy from the mid-2000s. Though it ran for a grand total of only 6 episodes, Darkplace definitely made its mark on British television and introduced the world to the creative talents of Matthew Holness, Richard Ayoade, Lowe and Matt Berry. Today I'll be giving you a brief overview of the series, its origins and its legacy, including its short-lived spin-off series. After that, I'll be taking a deep dive headlong into the Darkplace universe, exploring the characters, their stories, and hopefully answering a few questions about the allegedly cursed production. So sit back, dim the lights or turn them off if you don't have dimmer switches, put conventional logic to one side, and enjoy. Well, I say enjoy. Garth Marenghi's Darkplace was a Channel 4 comedy made in 2003 that presented itself as a piece of lost media from the 1980s. To call it immersive would probably be something of an understatement. Darkplace, which is essentially a show within a show, was the brainchild of fictional horror writer Garth Marenghi, who created and starred in the supernatural drama. The author claims that Darkplace was too radical and too out there to be shown on British TV at the time, although he states it did have a brief run in Peru. According to the programme, Darkplace resurfaced in 2004 thanks to the biggest creative drought in broadcast history, meaning that Garth's vision would finally get the resounding praise he thought it deserved. The show's creators, who appear in various interview segments, also seem totally convinced of its own brilliance. However, when we actually get to see Darkplace, we realise the production was a complete disaster from start to finish, full of terrible writing, acting, editing and special effects. And this is where much of the show's humour comes from. There's also an interesting behind-the-scenes story that unfolds throughout, as the show's fictional creators recount its many mishaps, including several fatalities, and speculate over whether the production was in fact cursed. Darkplace was fairly high concept for its time, and this even extended to the show's marketing, which kept up the pretense that Marenghi and co were all real people. Everyone involved remained in character throughout the show's advertising spots. Garth had his own author website, and the series was billed as a lost horror classic rather than a comedy. Given that its creators were all largely unknown at the time, that was quite a risky move on their part, but I would argue, an admirable one. Darkplace was one of these weird things that I'm surprised managed to get commissioned in the first place, but I'm eternally grateful to Channel 4 that it did. So, how did it all happen? From what hellmouth did the mind of Marenghi spew forth its potent nightmare juice? Come with me now on a journey through the mists of time, back to the darkest recesses of the early 2000s. Matthew Holness first invented Garth Marenghi while he was a student at Cambridge University. The character, a serious horror writer who had written more books than he'd read, would take to the stage to perform a monologue and later toured with the Cambridge Footlights. Holness, who'd been an avid Hammer horror fan from a very young age, had a genuine love of the genre he was spoofing, while playing his character with arrogance, pomposity, and a total lack of self-awareness. Whenever the audience laughed, Garth would assume they were doing so out of sheer terror. After a brief stint with the BBC Two sketch comedy Bruiser, Holness began writing for the stage along with fellow Cambridge graduate Richard Ayoade. This was the origin of Dean Lerner, Garth's dodgy publisher played by Ayoade, who would introduce the live show. While performing at the Hen and Chickens Theatre Bar in London, the pair would get acquainted with their future co-star Matt Berry, along with Julian Barrett and Noel Fielding of The Mighty Boosh, both of whom would appear as side characters when Darkplace was adapted for TV. The final pieces of the puzzle came in the form of Lowe, who apparently hadn't done much comedy work prior to Garth Marenghi, and Paul King, a director who had previously collaborated with Lowe at university. These days, he's probably best known for directing the 2 Paddington movies. The 4 creators would travel to Edinburgh, which Garth had dubbed the Hellmouth of the North, to perform their stage show, Garth Marenghi's Fright Night, at the 2000 Fringe Festival. Despite being newcomers, the show quickly became a hit and even received a nomination for that year's Perry Award. Fright Night also managed to score the group a deal with the comedy management company Avalon, who would later go on to produce the Darkplace TV series. Fright Night starred Garth Marenghi, who else, as the play's hero, an author by the name of Neil Hack. According to the Guardian review, Garth squares up to face the Fright Knight who has kidnapped his muse, does battle with the hag who makes ice cream from her own breast milk, and subdues the forces of evil. The show was promoted under the guise that Garth Marenghi was a real person, with flyers featuring reviews of his books and Garth's name appearing on the team's email account. The flyer also advertised a 2-for-1 ticket offer for goths, which would be permitted at Garth's discretion. As the flyer clearly states, no chancers in black t-shirts. According to a review on the BBC, the creative team were adamant about keeping their identities secret, even when off stage, and Matthew Holness would point-blank refuse to speak out of character. The following year, the same team would return to Edinburgh with their new show, Garth Marenghi's Netherhead. Netherhead was billed as the dramatisation of one of Garth's own books, in which a man finds himself in the plot of a horror novel by accident. In one review, Garth was described as the most agonisingly literal of writers, and the production values as winningly incompetent. The review also praised the performance of Alice Lowe, perhaps the most impressive because she is the most restrained. Her eyes locked on the audience, she speaks each line as if it conceals a profound message. If it does, Garth will be sure to explain it. There's nothing worse than a play that leaves you with questions, he declares. Netherhead proved to be an even greater success than its predecessor, winning the 2001 Perrier Award for Team Marenghi. But it wasn't long before Garth, Dean and company would be passing through the darkest portal known to man and entering the medium of television. First airing on the 29th of January 2004, Garth Marenghi's Darkplace took the characters and concepts from the stage show and crafted them into something truly unique. Combining 80s pastiche and horror tropes with a mockumentary-style framing device, Darkplace was an homage to the genre TV of the past that also managed to tap into that so-bad-it's-good style of comedy. And because the Darkplace creators were themselves fictional, this added a whole other level of characterisation, as we got to know the minds behind the madness. Each episode is introduced by Garth Marenghi as he reads an extract from one of his numerous published works and retrieves another Darkplace reel from the vault. The show then opens with the sweet nostalgia of that old Channel 4 ident. We're then treated to an epic opening sequence, especially the part where Garth rescues the baby from an exploding vehicle, which, I'm sorry to say, doesn't actually happen anywhere in the show. The rest of the episode is punctuated with interviews featuring Garth Marenghi, his publisher Dean Lerner, and the actor Todd Rivers, played by Matt Berry. One character who is notably absent from these interviews is Madeleine Wool, played by Alice Lowe, for reasons we'll get into later on. And there's no need to worry about any hidden meaning or metaphor in Darkplace, because of course Garth will explain his ideas in detail. I know writers who use subtext, he says, and they're all cowards. Garth Marenghi's Darkplace takes place during the 1980s in a hospital in Romford, East London, where a portal to hell has been opened and supernatural horrors occur on a weekly basis. Armed with his knowledge of the occult, along with a lot more firearms than you'd expect to see in a British hospital, Dr. Rick Douglas MD fights back against the forces of darkness. He's joined by his best bud, Dr. Lucien Sanchez, his hot-tempered boss, Thornton Reed, and woman, Liz Asher. Their adventures often end with the four of them laughing their heads off at a cheesy joke, before Garth solemnly muses on the day's events against the not-at-all-fake backdrop of the hospital roof. For fans of bad movies and TV, each episode of Darkplace is a joy from start to finish. The melodrama is constantly ramped up to 11, then broken by the occasional cast member who can't act at all. This category even includes one of the show's leads, as Dean Lerner delivers every line as awkwardly as humanly possible and is frequently spotted looking directly into the camera. Almost every line in the show feels horribly dubbed, with Todd Rivers being among the most noticeable. Though, to be fair, Matt Berry's voice does mostly sound like that, dubbed or not. We're also treated to some very clumsy framing, the odd bit of filming equipment still in shot, and some painfully desperate attempts at editing whatever usable footage they had left, often with glaring omissions and last-minute voiceovers. Of course, Darkplace was doomed to be a complete train wreck from the very beginning, because Garth is a hack writer who believes he's a genius. He seems incapable of writing any dialogue that sounds even remotely natural, whether it's in conversation or one of his many, many monologues. Humans just don't talk the way this writer thinks they do. His protagonist, Dr. Rick Douglas, is also a prime example of a Mary Sue. Not only is he painted as heroic and noble at all times, other characters will often note that Douglas has a special aura around him, children praise him as a hero, and at one point a priest tells him, "You're the most sensitive man I know, and I know God." Garth also seems to have a bit of a problem when it comes to writing women, most of whom get killed off by the end of the episode. The only recurring female role is Liz, who is frequently sidelined by the rest of the group. She's constantly being insulted, getting slapped in the face for acting hysterical, and she's even given a lobotomy at the end of episode 2, for which she remembers to give a polite thank you. Apart from this, Liz spends most of her time thinking about boys, makeup, and her favourite author, Garth Marenghi. Yes, Garth's novels also exist within the Darkplace universe for no other reason than for the characters to heap praise upon them. Her character bio in the DVD booklet also claims that Liz has slept with Douglas on numerous occasions, but has yet to form any meaningful relationship with her hero. Her bio also states that she is afflicted with emotional instability like most women. The only things more outdated than Garth's attitudes are the show's special effects, which are nothing short of glorious. Whether a scene involves exploding patients, mutant eye children, or women turning into broccoli, Dynamatronics has it covered in the most ridiculous and cheapest way imaginable. Special mention should also be given to the show's sound effects, and the music, which, while suitably dated and derivative, still sounds far better than it really has any right to be. The soundtrack even managed to get the composer, Andrew Hewitt, nominated for a BAFTA, although in true Darkplace fashion, the composer was listed under the fake name Stig Baasvik. Stig only gets partial credit on the show, however, as his compositions were based on melodies originally whistled by Garth Marenghi. While every episode of Darkplace is memorable in its own way, my two personal favourites would have to be Hell Hath Fury and Scotch Mist. Being Scottish and also a woman, I can't help but love Garth's horrendous takes on both groups, from Liz Asher's telekinetic freakout over a chicken supper, to Rick Douglas's monologue about that fateful night he once had to spend in Glasgow. I mean, technically I should be insulted, but I don't know. I've seen stranger things on Union Street at 3:30 in the morning. As for the resolution, where the murderous Scottish ghosts are appeased with a bag of shortbread, well, I'm not saying it wouldn't work. We do love our shortbread. It's certainly worth a try if you ever find yourself confronted by an angry Scot, although I should point out that, unlike in Darkplace, we don't come with subtitles. The Darkplace Dean VD, also comes with a full commentary track for every episode with Garth, Dean and Todd, and of course, the three of them stay in character for the duration. These are hilarious in their own right, and reveal even more of Garth's pretentiousness, Dean's illicit business ventures, and Todd being a washed-up alcoholic who gets bored while watching any scene he isn't in. The disc also includes more interviews with the three, some lost footage, and the full-length version of the Todd Rivers single One Track Lover, which I can confirm Matt Berry will sometimes perform in his live shows. Garth Marenghi's Darkplace is available to watch on BritBox and via the Channel 4 app, which I'd make the most of, by the way, while it's still free to use. You might also be able to find whole episodes uploaded to YouTube, although some of these have since been taken down. And if you still collect physical media, then I can't recommend the DVD edition highly enough, and you can usually find copies of it pretty cheap. Whether you're new to the series or you've seen it already, Darkplace is infinitely rewatchable, endlessly quotable, and a great one to watch with friends who appreciate this kind of humour. Sadly, Garth Marenghi's Darkplace only ever lasted for one short series. This is most likely due to poor viewing figures in its initial run, which would not have been helped by the show's late-night time slot and lack of advertising. It might also have been a bit difficult finding its audience, seeing as the programme was being marketed completely in-universe. Despite this, the show had already amassed a small but dedicated cult following who were devastated by the news of its cancellation. A fan-made website, Save Darkplace, was launched in response, and at least 2 petitions were created through Petition Online. Unfortunately, this was not enough to revive Darkplace. Quite fittingly, the show's demise was announced in character on the official Garth Marenghi website, which can still be read on the Wayback Machine. In Garth's own words, "The news on a second season of Darkplace is thus. There is no news. Sadly, the rest of the tapes of my meisterwerk are likely to remain chez Marenghi unless the world makes some kind of evolutionary leap and catches up with my vision. And between you, me and the proverbial, I think I might have taped over one of them with an episode of the Thornbirds." Fortunately, this online attention proved there was still interest in the show and its characters, prompting Channel 4 to repeat the series and later release the DVD. On the 16th of May 2005, the BBC's comedy blog announced that Matthew Holness and Richard Ayoade had been approached by Film 4 to write a script for a full-length Darkplace movie. Unfortunately, this project never came to fruition, but the following year Garth Marenghi and Dean Lerner would make their return to the small screen. Yes, just in case you didn't know, Darkplace even managed to get a spin-off of sorts. Man to Man with Dean Lerner was launched on Channel 4 in October 2006. Made in the form of a spoof chat show and filmed before a live studio audience, Dean Lerner would welcome each guest, all of whom were played by Matthew Holness, to talk man to man. In the background would be Dean's primary partner and bartender Satu, and each show would feature archive clips of Dean's guest star for that week. While you didn't have to watch Darkplace to enjoy Man to Man, this second show did a pretty good job of revisiting the characters from the Darkplace universe. Most prominent, of course, is the character of Dean Lerner, who continues to present himself as a classy gentleman while being nothing of the sort. We get even more hints about his shady business deals, criminal activities, and the fact that most of his guests are somehow being exploited by him. And yes, Garth Marenghi is here too, giving us some unique insights into his film career, art exhibitions, and the time he almost lost an ear. While not quite as memorable or consistent as Darkplace, Man to Man is still an interesting and funny show in its own right. It's also a great showcase for Matthew Holness's chameleon-like abilities, as he appears as a completely different person every week. 2 definite standouts are the Garth Marenghi episode, of course, and also his performance as the model and folk singer Merriman Weir. If you watch nothing else from this series, be sure to check out the clip from Garth Marenghi's latest film, The War of the Wasps of course being a metaphor for the Dutch, and the music video for Gallows Man, which features Matt Berry and Alice Lowe. I also love the trailer for the Grindhouse movie Bitch Killer, which is featured in episode 6 and was supposed to be based off of one of Garth Marenghi's early novels. Garth claims that he was still a very angry person when he wrote the book, but since then he's actually met some women and some of them are alright. Yeah, I definitely get the feeling that if Garth were a real author, he'd be turning up on r/men writing women. While Man to Man doesn't seem to be available on any streaming services at the moment, some of the episodes have been uploaded to YouTube and the full series can still be found on Dailymotion. And once again, the series has a DVD edition, which is jam-packed with bonus material. Man to Man was also available as part of a box set along with Garth Marenghi's Darkplace, though it appears that this edition has since been discontinued. And now, Pilgrim, we're about to take a journey through the world of Darkplace itself, its characters, and its supposed curse. Take heed, traveller, for here be monsters. Garth Marenghi, whose name is an anagram of Arg Nightmare, is an extremely prolific English horror writer. And by prolific, I mean his creative output makes Stephen King look like George R.R. Martin. Garth works 24 hours a day, because he also counts dreaming as working, and he gets his inspiration from eating lots of cheese. He calls himself an imaginer, a dreamweaver, a visionary, and a rebel, though he also claims to hate labels. Garth was born to Solomon and Gaynor Marenghi in Leytonstone and spent his childhood in Romford recovering from jaundice. Always a morbid child, Garth would pull the wings off flies, as many schoolboys tend to do, but young Garth would take it one step further and also perform autopsies. He was raised Roman Catholic and now considers himself lapsed, however, he will occasionally pray to himself. Garth currently lives in Barnes with his wife Pam and his 4 daughters, Meredith, Jocasta, Katrina, and one that has yet to be named. His 2 eldest children are twins, and for many years Garth was convinced that one of them would eat the other. Garth also longed to have a son, a desire he would later channel into the Darkplace episode Skipper the Eye Child. Skipper, incidentally, was the name of Garth's beloved pet dog, who was tragically killed by wasps. When he isn't writing, Garth is also a proficient artist. His first exhibition, Imaginata Horrificata, made people so terrified that they didn't turn up. However, he made sure to display plenty of writing next to each painting so there would be no risk of subtext. Garth also set up the Garth Marenghi Foundation, which is designed to harness psychokinetic abilities in underprivileged kids. According to Garth, the foundation has the full backing of the army, and they already have one kid who's very intuitive. Garth has a few interesting theories about the world we live in. For example, that broccoli came from space, and that the UK is secretly being run by rats. He also believes that wasps were the originators of life on Earth, and that we are all part wasp, but there are also some pure people that remain, and that he is one of them. When Garth dies, he wants to have his cremated remains blown out of a medieval horn. Garth Marenghi first met Dean Lerner while working at Beelzebooks, a renowned publishing house specialising in cutting-edge erotica and splatter fiction. The 2 men fell in like at first sight and formed the most important and meaningful relationship in Dean's life, at least from a financial perspective. Dean already had a background in delivering high-quality upmarket erotica for the discerning connoisseur, and wondered how quickly the horror community would wake up to the idea of scary porn, hence the tagline, "Books that will scare you stiff." Besides Beelzebooks, Dean also ran the Dean Lerner Book Club, which has published the Glenn Nimrod autobiography, Bought Seriously, as well as Dean's own book, I Have a Dean. Dean is also known for his many business ventures, perhaps inspired by his hard-working mother, who'd been a taxidermist, a pool cleaner, and a quick-fit fitter. Some of Dean's hustles include 6 nudie bars, a nightclub called Dino's, a restaurant called Chez Dino's, an erotic comic called The Dino, and a men's magazine called Jigglers. He also runs D&I Disc Records, which includes a 30-year management agreement with the folk singer Merriman Weir. Plus, he once owned a car racing team in the 1980s known as the Dean Team. He presented the chat show Man to Man with Dean Lerner in 2006, having previously hosted the show Dino's After Dark. Besides Darkplace, his film and TV credits include the role of Rudy Ray Curtis, the Mile-End Mac Daddy, in the film Bitch Killer. However, Dean does not think of himself as an actor, and instead considers his performance to be the truth. Despite cultivating the image of a gentleman, Dean is anything but. His counts of illegal and illicit activity include multiple allegations of fraud and manslaughter, and his mansion has been subjected to several routine customs and excise investigations. These resulted in most of the original Darkplace footage being lost or destroyed. Several of his business rivals have died under suspicious circumstances, and he even makes several thinly veiled threats towards his guests during Man to Man. Dean is also quite the womanizer and claims he once learned how to hypnotise women, but with that power must come responsibility. Though whether that responsibility was ever practised is doubtful. Dean has fathered several illegitimate children, announcing in 2006 that he's got another son because you can't argue with a DNA test, not for long. According to Garth's website, Garth and Dean had a fallout in the 1980s over the financial collapse of Darkplace. Marenghi took his business to a new manager, but the union was cut short when the latter was found shot dead in his flat shortly after their first power lunch. After this tragic episode, Lerner and Marenghi reconciled their differences and are now inseparable. The pair's most ambitious project to date was, of course, Garth Marenghi's Darkplace. Upon reading Garth's first script, intended to make audiences laugh, cry and shit themselves at the same time, Dean believed it would be the most significant television event since Quantum Leap. They spent the next 4 weeks shooting 40 episodes despite the fact that no channel or network had commissioned or even asked for it. Thanks to the pair's egos and inexperience, the real horror of Darkplace ended up taking place behind the scenes. and while its creators claim that the production was cursed, it sounds like most of these incidents took place due to sheer negligence and outright abuse. Crew members kept leaving the production, going down from about 30 to 7 in a short space of time, most likely due to the fact that Dean Lerner refused to pay them. Even if they were paid, there was still a significant risk factor for those involved. If you are an extra, according to Dean, you know the risks. You might die, and that's why they get £80 a day. Through the Darkplace interviews, we also hear about a sound man being bollocked because the mic was putting Garth off his acting, and the child actor being punched by Dean Lerner for criticising Garth's writing. The Darkplace interviews also imply a great deal of drunken debauchery, with Garth bemoaning the combined drinking and lovemaking at all hours. In the words of Dean Lerner, "Both Todd and I were wild then, behaving like flippin' Romans. We were like animals." Apparently the two of them were seen naked on set, but this is something neither of them can remember. Dean and Todd's drunken mishaps also resulted in some of Darkplace's footage being lost for episode 6, which had to be replaced with on-set photos and a voiceover. 2 known Darkplace fatalities were technicians who were poisoned after inhaling the fog and Scotch mist. But according to Dean, if someone has to die, it might as well be a techie. Other fatal incidents included a cat, for which Garth at least claims to feel some remorse, and a man named Colin who was brained by a flying bin before walking off set and being hit by a bus. This latter incident forced Dean Lerner to suffer the indignity of a manslaughter trial. By the time Darkplace was cancelled, it had already claimed 6 lives, caused 3 nervous breakdowns, and been subject to at least 1 visitation. Dean also blames the production for his bankruptcy and for Todd's alcoholism. Since then, much of the film has been lost to time, or more accurately, to the Thames. During a police raid on Dean's London mansion, he was forced to get rid of certain articles, sharpish, which led to half of Darkplace being dumped in the river. And of course, there is still the unanswered question of Darkplace's leading lady, Madeleine Wool. This is never answered in universe, although there are several hints and theories. So what did happen in the case of this missing actress? Madeleine Wool was one of the 4 main stars of Garth Marenghi's Darkplace. However, she appears in none of the interview segments, commentaries, or other promotional material. This is because, midway through the series, we learn that the actress went missing towards the end of the production and that her current whereabouts are unknown. While Madeleine's official status is missing presumed dead, the crew of Darkplace seem to be very certain that she is, in fact, dead. In the words of Dean Lerner, dead as a dog in a ditch. Dean also states that he doesn't think they'll find anything, but has a hunch she may be buried somewhere in the Eastern Bloc, if she got a burial. Garth also seems convinced that Madeleine has departed this mortal realm and claims that she once spoke to him from beyond the grave in order to help with his writing. One interesting detail is that Madeleine's only surviving relative, her son, appeared on the radio as part of a Darkplace promotional spot. This recording can be found on the DVD. Madeleine's son also seems confident that she is dead and says he plans to visit her grave in Croatia, though we should probably take this with a grain of salt as it's clear from the promo that her son is far more interested in claiming his mother's royalties. So what did happen to Madeleine Wool? According to a poll on the old Save Darkplace forum, the majority of fans suspect that Dean Lerner was the one who killed her, or at the very least that he was involved in some way. This makes a lot of sense, seeing as Dean has an incredibly dubious track record and a history of violent acts, including standing on a cat's head and punching a child. It's also heavily implied that he's murdered several business rivals and at least 1 ex-girlfriend. So there's a fair chance that Ms. Wool's fate was to become one of Dean's many victims in his long list of crimes. Maybe there was even some evidence of this in the missing Darkplace footage that Dean had deliberately destroyed. There's also the theory that her death might have happened as a result of some drunken misadventure, possibly involving both Dean Lerner and Todd Rivers. In the interviews, the cast recall that she wouldn't sit on Todd's knee despite being harassed, plus Todd himself claims that she disappeared somewhere near her dressing room shower. While his memory might not exactly be reliable, there's a chance that Todd might have been one of the last people to see her alive. And while nobody seems to suspect Garth, it's clear that there was some animosity on his part towards Madeleine. I could see the darkness in her eyes, he claims. I could see that she'd done things with the Horned One. In any case, we know from the commentaries that Madeleine was treated very badly throughout filming, eventually becoming very depressed. Who knows? Maybe she even faked her death just to get the hell away from them all. Though it looks like the true story of Madeleine Wool may be lost forever, she'll always be remembered by the fans, the surviving crew, and her co-stars. She was like a candle in the wind, remembers Garth Marenghi. Unreliable. Well, that's about the size of it in a nutshell. I hope you enjoyed this summary of Darkplace and that you'll consider giving it a watch, or rewatch as the case may be. Trust me, it never gets old and still makes me laugh no matter how many times I see it. Will we ever witness a return to the world of Darkplace? Well, its creators are all very busy and successful people these days, but I'd like to think that nothing's impossible. I'd personally love to see a documentary on the disappearance of Madeleine Wool, complete with badly shot reconstruction sequences with actors who look nothing like the originals, but maybe that's just me. It probably won't happen, but if there was ever a chance of a Darkplace reunion, then I can guarantee that I'd watch the ever-loving shit out of it. Finally, I'd like to give a special mention to the good folks at Channel 4, who took a chance on Darkplace as well as so many other weird and wonderful comedies over the years. This show was by no means a safe bet, and hardly something that screamed commercial appeal. Now, as it looks like the channel is about to be privatised, I personally find it deeply sad to think we may be witnessing the end of an era in British comedy. There's a petition running against the privatisation at the time of recording, so I'll link that below for anyone who wants to sign it. So on that note, I'd like to say a big thanks to a channel that's been inspiring my comedic taste for as long as I can remember, and also a big almighty fuck you to Nadine Dorris. Well, that's it from me, but not for very long, as the new series of Inside Number 9 is right around the corner, and yes, I'm going to be reviewing the new episodes. And with the guest stars they've got lined up this time, I'm sure it's going to be amazing. So remember to like, subscribe and ring the bell to hear me talk more about dark and strange TV shows, and don't forget to leave your thoughts, favourite quotes and any Darkplace conspiracy theories in the comments below. Thank you for sticking around to the end of this video, and I'll see you all again very soon. Good night.